addition to that, you need to add the restrictions. And here you can see the fixed costs, which are basically related. They are the ones that I point out here. Fee is very high. So in this model, we can see the variables. So if you see a particular case that you want to solve with a service, for example, with 25 buses that has a complete run of 54 kilometers and a frequency of 6 dispatches per hour, of course, on your way forward and back, well, it generates a problem of 500,000 variable, 300,000 restrictions, and 1.5 million non-zero coefficients. And that generates a very important problem for a very small problem. So here we have if we have 25 buses, we have a very important problem which makes this types of models non-practical at a large scale. So you need a holistic methodology if you want to work with, I don't know, let's say 215 buses. Now, regarding the design of use and road security, well, you can choose different ways to place the chargers. So for example, this could be at the external part of the terminal, as you can see in the image, and the buses would need to have to go backwards to charge. Or you could also locate the chargers in the middle of the terminal, as you can see in this picture. And also, the buses to charge would have to go backwards. But you could also have a configuration of this type. For example, it's like a gas station, and the flow would only be forward. And each one of these combinations that you can choose have advantages and disadvantages, and then you will realize it after you chose. But when it's implemented, you see how things happen. Now, regarding the design and construction of civil works or electric works, well, I'm going to talk about the two cases of STP. One is the Juanita terminal, 170 buses approximately, and we implemented 25 UTOG buses and 13 chargers of 150 kilowatts, and it of course has two GANs, so if you charge simultaneously, the power is divided into two. And I'm also going to talk about the case of Conquistador, 250 photon buses, 55 chargers of 150 kilowatts, and this terminal has 8.8 megawatts of installed power, and that is one of the largest throughout the world. Here, for example, you can see the Juanita terminal. The red buses are where the chargers are located. So basically, the setup that we chose is the first one that we showed in the case of use and road safety. The problem of this type of setup is that the buses have to park backwards, and that sometimes generate conflicts in the operation. So that was built by NG, and it was an agreement between NG and STP, and here you can see the chargers, right? This is a typical structure that is known in several parts of Santiago, and this is a structure that is known in several parts of Santiago de Chile. Now, taking the experience of Juanita Terminal, which is small, we decided to implement, of course, in a very large terminal, 215 electric buses, photon with 55 chargers. Because of the experience of Juanita, we didn't want to have this backward parking maneuver. So what did we suggest? That the operation was in only one direction, and we can see the chart here in red. This project was made with Copec. Here we have 4 charging stations. You can see them in pink or purple right now. And what was sought was to model a gas station, but it reduces the space available. Therefore, Copec proposed to have a structure like the one as you can see here, chargers with the second floor in height, and it's important to mention that this type of infrastructure is not found anywhere in the world, these second floor chargers. So how does it look like? Like this. It's very similar to the drawing. The chargers are here. And there are other types of complications here because we need to use the technology to optimize the chargers and the charging maneuvers. And for that, we use, of course, technology, as I mentioned before, and it's important to mention that both our buses and chargers have telemetry, so we have real-time information in our servers. In addition to that, through mobile devices or a desktop, you can execute actions on the charger, and you can see here next to the charger a lifting system that pulls the hose up and down if you execute the right action. As I mentioned before, telemetry, since this is real time, the idea is that you can use the tablets. Now, regarding data usage, what do you need? If I have three buses en route, what I'm interested in knowing is at what time and with what SOC will they come to the terminal? That's a question that we always ask ourselves. Why is this question interesting? Basically, because in the terminals where it's where you make the charging decision. So it's important to anticipate to that and knowing with what charge will they get there and at what time. So for that, what we did was to develop methodology that allowed us to obtain the travel times and the different SOC consumptions en route. So here in the graph, what you see, basically, if I'm at a distance of the, at a certain distance of the origin in my trip and at a certain time of the day, which would be axis Y. So here it's have the day. Basically, what I want to know is if I'm at a certain distance and at a certain time of the day, how long will I need to get to the other end of the route? So here, for example, it says x equals 6. So it means that I'm 6 kilometers from the origin and it's 18 hours and 30. So it's 6:30 p.m. So that means that I'm going to take 75 minutes to end my trip. It is important to consider that for a specific month there are 84 million records in GPS and trip data and 30 million telemetry records with 32 attributes. Now, in the case of SOC, you look for the same thing. If I am at a certain distance of origin at a certain time of the day, how much will I consume to get to the end of that route? For example, if I'm at kilometer 10 of the route, so it's 15:30 hours of the day, so I'm going to consume this. This is particular use. So we can see the SOC and why is it important for the charge management systems. So here we can see the chargers on the second floor and underneath you have the hose of the bus and you can see that in the green boxes. So here we have the main problem. How do you do to lower the hose? And DMAX facilitate an app to facilitate the chargers and CDP used CAFE and used the software to develop and to manage and monitor the loads. And it's very important to make very efficient the use of the terminal in terms of height, because as I said before, it's a unique one in the world. It's a single type. And this is what the web app looks like, and also in a mobile device. In this picture that is very impressive, that's a terminal at night, of course, with full charge. And this is an engineering in charge Chilean development made by STP. What can you see in this software? All of these rectangles that you can see are the charging stations of a specific station. So in red, it means that the charging spot is busy, and in blue there is is a bus that is charging, and you can see the percentage of charge and how long has it been charging for. In yellow, that's standby. Basically, a person said that they were going to use, well, in the system, they generated booking for a specific bus. So what do you can see when you do a booking? You can see something like what you use in the screen. You can activate it and you can choose the seconds for it to go up or down, and you can initiate the load. That's how the app looks like in a mobile device. This is how you can see it in the screen. And just to finish, I want to show you the example of the fleet operation. So what we do is we wanted to check difference regarding the regeneration. Basically, we considered of having the bus in zero and then 50 hours and then stop it completely. So with that, there were 8 study cases or 8 examples that you can see on your screens, and you can see how was the power that was regenerated. In case one, that is in red, it's a very a very abrupt slope, and in the last case in green, what was requested to the driver was to brake appropriately. Here you can see that there is a difference of 280 watts in the regenerated power.
A la hora de llevar las capacitaciones a los conductores y hacerlo entender cuál es la importancia de un buen regenerado, un buen frenado, ¿cierto? Un frenado correcto y no andar frenando de forma abrupta en la ruta.
This is important to show the drivers why it's important to brake correctly.
Bueno, esa fue la presentación.
Well, this is the end of my presentation. I hope that you were able to understand the equations and the explanations that I wanted to show you about STP. We would like to thank Diego Muñoz for his presentation. Any questions that you might have regarding this presentation will be left for the discussion panel with Paulina. So please bear with us and keep on sending your questions. To continue with the presentations, now we will hear from Pedro Buitrago Bustamante. He is the head of the area of buses in Colombia. Pedro is a mechanical engineer, experienced in operations management and logistics since 2011. He has participated in the technical operational administrative structuring for the operation of the different bus lines in the metro of Medellin, including bus purchase processes, contracting of goods and services, construction of processes, and operating procedures, as well as operation of feeder services in Cuentas 3 and 6. He also has broad experience with natural gas and electric buses. We are now going to give the floor to Pedro Buitriago so he can deliver his presentation. Hello, good morning. I would like to particularly express my greetings to the organizers and participants. It is an honor to be with you here today and to share part of our experience, the experience of the Metro of Medellin and our experience with bus operation. I will going to start with the operation by giving some information about the Metro of Medellin. Then we will move on to the operation of the bus lines and our experience with electric buses. Well, the Metro of Medellin is a public company. The partners are the municipality of Medellin and the governance office of Antioquia. In 40 years of experience in the valley of Aburrá, the Metro of Medellin has managed and operated the mass transport system. It has generated development, and it has offered quality of life to the population. This has brought about integration and transformation of the territory. The sustainability of the Metro of Medellin has been incorporated into its strategic goals. So the top goal of the company is to generate quality of life by connecting and integrating people and promoting sustainable territories. Additionally, we have some corporate values an ambitious goal, which clearly reflects the principles of the metro cultures. In these metro culture principles, we underscore value, respect, and care for our users, the importance of our servers, of our employers, employees, collaborators, and partners, and the protection of our environment and surroundings. Since this seminar is about electromobility, it is worth mentioning that all the lines that are part of this integrated system operate with clean energies. 25 years ago, as you can see in the bottom part, we initiated the operations of Line A of trains, the first metro line in Colombia. And since then, we have been promoting sustainable mobility in Medellin and in the Valley of Aburrá. In this outline, you can see the 11 lines currently operating, in addition to one of the cable lines that is in the construction phase. In 25 years of operation, the system has had a growth, has experienced growth and development, and it has significantly increased its coverage in the Valley of Aburrá, following a master expansion plan that has been built and developed in a careful manner. At present, we operate 2 metro lines, 5 air cable lines, 3 PRT lines, and 1 tram line. And in construction, we have another air cable line. So all in all, it's important to ensure physical, operational, and fair integration. In 2019, at the beginning of this year, we were moving 1.5 million passengers on a daily basis on a typical work day through these 11 lines. And in 2019, we mobilized over 318 million passengers. The figures of this year are, of course, quite different. In addition to these lines that you can see on the scheme of the massive component, these are supplemented with feeder services and integrated services provided by the buses that come from the neighborhoods, and they generate integration and they feed into these lines. For this system to work with a true integration, we have established within our mission processes the transport service cycle. In this cycle, we indicate the moments in which the user has interaction with the system. And these are moments in which we analyze each of the needs and each of the attributes that give more weight or significance to the user, so we manage them properly so the user can feel in each of our lines, in each of these moments of time, that he's actually part of an integrated system with physical, fair, operational integration and supported by a single mode of payment, which is the Civica system, and also supported by the metro culture. The metro culture was built by the company much before initiating the operation, and the metro culture is something that is embedded into each of our users and each of our employees, employers, and each person part of the system. This generates adequate ownership and respect by all the users, the community at large, the neighbors, the areas or sectors of influence where we have each of our lines present. So now let us move on to give more details about the operation of the bus system. At present, we have over 500 buses in operation. Some of them are directly operated by us in the Metro of Medellin, and with others, we have concession contracts for feeder services. These feeder services are operated or run by private entities. We began in 2011 the first operation in Colombia of buses from the mass transport systems with gas-run buses. This was a decision made by the municipality of Medellin to take a step towards the transformation of public transport so we can migrate towards cleaner fuels. And this is fully aligned with, I just mentioned, that all the lines of the mass system, all the integrated lines that are operating with clean fuels. So we have an operation of BRT lines that you can see on the top part. We have articulated buses and standard buses. Within them, we have an electric articulated one. I will give more details about this articulated unit. And we have 47, and we have 64 standard buses. So we also have feeders, and these are coaches for 180 to 108 and 40 passengers. You can also see some pictures on the bottom part, and this is an initiative taken by the private sector. He's very well aware of the diesel fuel and has had some experience with natural gas, and they decided to bet on and to be part of this transformation or migration towards electromobility. So on this system of feeder buses, they do not have exclusive roads, they do not have roads with good technical requirements and capacity, so it's quite challenging because they need to prove on the slopes how buses behave, the maneuverability, the turning radius, the autonomy and the performance under these tricky and difficult conditions that we might have in some areas or neighborhoods of Medellin because we have several steep and high slopes. So now, let us talk about the history of electric buses in the mass transport system of the Valley of Aburrá. In this timeline, we are presenting some of the most important milestones for electrical mobility in Medellin and in the region of the metropolitan area. First of all, in 2015, we subscribed a framework interinstitutional cooperation agreement with 5 public entities, the metropolitan area of the Valley of Aburrá, the Transport Authority, the Municipality of Medellin, public companies of Medellin, the electrical utility, and Metro Plus and Metro de Medellin as operators of the transport system. As part of the goals of this framework cooperation agreement, we decided to analyze, structure, and promote electromobility projects that will have an impact on the environmental sustainability and the quality of life of the region. After close coordination and after setting up interesting working tables with the entity, we decided to implement a pilot project with an electric articulated bus, and they provided funds, resources. The work done by this technical team was about analyzing the market, analyzing the suppliers, defining the technical and characteristics and specifications that the bus should meet. And by having defined and established these characteristics, technical characteristics, they decided to buy the bus. Back then, the BYD manufacturer was always present. He had brought some buses for test, both articulated and standard buses, and in the end they went through the process and they met all the technical specifications, so they decided to procure the articulated bus to the BYD supplier, and this bus began its operations in April of 2018. I will give you more details about the performance of this bus that has been running for the last 2.5 years. As a result, and supported by such good results that we have obtained with the electric articulated bus, the municipality of Medellin decided to buy more buses. The municipality of Medellin decided to continue supporting transformation of public system, and at the end of 2018, they began a process with public funds, once again, to buy 64 electric standard buses and the implementation of a new corridor or a new line of BRTs integrated into the mass system. These buses began operation in December 2019. We are about to celebrate 1 year of operation. On the other hand, we have another important milestone, as I mentioned before in the previous slide. One of the private entities operating the transport system also initiated a process of technical and financial structuring to procure electric buses. They decided to implement a pilot project with a number of buses. So after analyzing the results and the performance of these buses, they would make a decision and they would forecast the replacement of their fleet. So they began operation mid this year. All the buses that you can see here and the 69 buses, electric buses that we have in operation in the Aburrá Valley have shown very good results so far. As part of the development plan of the municipality of Medellin, we are estimating that by the year 2023, we should reach 130 buses. At present, we have 69 buses, and the municipality of Medellin wishes to have 130 buses between private operation and public operation by 2023. From the beginning, when we initiated this framework agreement of cooperation, and when we began organizing these technical tables where we met with public and private entities. We have had total openness and willingness to share the experience and the knowledge acquired. And we believe that this is very important among the transport guild members, because in this way we can encourage other companies to replace their fleet so we can bring down all those myths. So the good practices, the lessons learned from others can be shared and replicated so other companies can take the leap at the national level. We are promoting, this is not shown on my timeline, but in the last 2 years, they have been setting national parameters and guidelines to promote electromobility. We have drafted a couple of laws, and we have a national electromobility strategy. So in the future, in 10 or 15 years, most of the transport system will migrate to electrical transport, and the national government and the technical regulatory agencies are working on international benchmarks to build technical standards. Everything is positive and everything is more than welcome to strengthen electromobility in the country. Here we have some information about this first bus that we started operating in April 2018. This bus was acquired as part of the framework agreement that we mentioned, with contribution of public resources in order to foster initiatives, always with full openness and willingness of sharing this experience with others, so we can build a basket of costs, so we can analyze the costs of the bus. We do not only want to stay with the procurement or acquisition costs, because everybody's scared of this cost, but we also wish to build the cost of the vehicle over time. The different manufacturers of buses that we have identified in the market can offer different characteristics, different specifications. The key here is that for each operation, we cannot apply this concept to all of them, but for each operation has certain characteristics and specific characteristics. So we have to develop a sound analysis and sizing and develop a good definition so we can obtain good results. Otherwise, poor results, poor implementation can lead to more fears, challenges, and unnecessary alerts. Here we see some data from the bus. The bus is an articulated bus with a capacity for 160 passengers. It has a power that, if we compare it with fuel-operated vehicles, fossil fuel vehicles, it has a power of 180 kilowatts and a torque of 1,500 Newton meter. So these are key specifications for a proper performance in our system, because in our system we have slopes of 15 to 20% in sections where they have the largest occupation. So this vehicle, with all its users and passengers, is weighing around 30 tons. And with those 30 tons, this vehicle has to travel this 15 to 20% slope. So proper sizing is key to have a proper performance. So far, we have had a very good performance. This bus is a bus that has very good autonomy according to the needs of our operation. This bus can be planned for, so if for running 20 hours a day, from 4 in the morning, the first travels, until the 11 in the night, the last travel. So this bus can complete them with one single charging. With this night charging period, we have a very good performance and very good autonomy during the day. We have evidence, we have seen savings by comparing the GNV or natural gas vehicle that we have in the other fleets. So we have had savings of 20 to 25% savings in lubricants and coolants. This is quite significant because we eliminate the combustion engine and we can streamline a large part of this consumption of lubricants and coolants that we need to have on a regular basis in the combustion engine vehicles. And this bus has a high reliability and high availability. As I said, this is a bus that can be used for 20 hours, and we have this full availability of the bus for it to operate. There was an interesting process of analyzing suppliers and characteristics to identify who was meeting these attributes. And as I said, the supplier has offered very good conditions and technical specifications. Once again, we streamline the powertrain, and this extremely streamlines processes, materials, consumables, interventions by eliminating the combustion engine, by eliminating transmission, by eliminating the differential. The, the fact that we are streamlining the powertrain from the start, it can make maintenance reliability of this type of vehicles much easier. This vehicle has very good performance as well because of the torque and power during the curves. The power and the torque of these vehicles are very different to the curves of torque and power of a natural gas vehicle, because a natural gas vehicle needs a certain number of revolutions, and it takes some time to reach this number of revolutions to deliver torque and performance for a proper performance during the slopes. This vehicle has immediate torque and power, so the performance in the slopes is very good. The results that we had at the beginning and that we have had with this articulated electric bus encouraged the municipality of Medellin to develop a public tender with the goal of acquiring a fleet of standard buses. So here you can see part of the specifications or the conditions that were established back then. We had 64 buses. We had established a period of around 30 months to execute this contract, 6 months for the delivery of the flat, and 24 months of post-sale service. This post-sale service, this relationship with the vendor is also key. I will tell you more about this shortly. And these conditions were new standard buses, 100% electric, fed by a battery, a total length per bus of 12 meters with a capacity between 80 to 90 passengers. This process of procurement included the supply and commissioning of the chargers. We also set some conditions, some post-sale conditions, that there had to be a warranty, there had to be preventive coverage, and they had to ensure availability of fleet. In this way, the manufacturer or the supplier of the fleet is still there. It is looking after its product, and they are fulfilling their commitments or obligations under the contract. In this process, we had the participation of different companies representing BYD. They were also representing manufacturers, Chinese manufacturers, Chongtong and Yutong. And in the end, the consortium organized between BYD headquarters, BYD Colombia. This consortium was the one to which this bid was awarded to, since they met all the technical specifications and evaluation criteria for the buses. So with these buses, we are about to celebrate 1 year of operation with very good operational results. By process, they established that the buses had to guarantee a minimum autonomy of 280 kilometers during the operations. We have run autonomy tests. We have also done a proper follow-up, and this goes hand in hand with the creation of protocols of charging and discharging of buses, and we have done validations in that the bus autonomy can reach 320 kilometers. This gives us very good expectations, taking into account this uncertainty of how buses can lose autonomy over time. With an autonomy of 280 kilometers, the articulated bus can travel all day. So the fact of having an autonomy of 320 kilometers in control tests that we have done with occupation and also without occupation gives us a very good condition and a very good expectations on how, when the capacity or autonomy of the buses begins deteriorating, we will still be within very positive ranges, adequate or acceptable ranges for the system. Here we have some characteristics of the bus. Our system has high floor stations. On the left-hand side, it has doors 90 centimeters, and on the right, it also has doors. It has universal accessibility. They also have platforms for PMR users. It has routers or route informants. It has auditive and sound signals that are letting the users know about the location and the operational conditions. A very important condition in these buses is that in a coordinated way with the authorities and the municipality of Medellin, we decided to implement collections without turnstile. The users does not have a barrier preventing his access. The user can access freely through the doors. However, we believe that the metro culture that we have replicated and implemented in each of our lines and in each of our systems, that metro culture that is already part of our users will make them fulfill the regulations. And we are very happy for having made this decision because there's no evasion. All the user in a very tight, in a very orderly manner do the queue, and they comply with all of this. In the post-sale conditions that were established in this process, this included 3 years of warranty, 2 years of preventive maintenance, 95.38% of fleet availability that needs to be guaranteed by the vendor. And in terms of duration of the batteries, they need to guarantee that in year 8, the degradation or loss of autonomy is in 65%. It cannot be below 65%. Establishing this type of post-sale conditions, we believe it's quite positive because in this way, the vendor or supplier is fully involved and is looking after the product. It is not just that he hands over the product and he waits for his next sale, but he is doing the commissioning, the implementation, the operation. This has given us very good results because they deal with any warranty-related issues and other issues or problems that might affect the reliability or availability of the fleet. So they're always there. In the operation of these buses, the users perceive a friendly driving, and this friendly driving is due to two important factors, two critical and supplementary factors. One of them is because of the technology of the buses, the electric technology. Because of the electric technology, the start and the braking of the buses is softer, smoother, not as sharp, but this is closely related with the driving habits, with the habits and the good practices of the drivers or the operators of these buses. And for this, we provide training to the bus drivers. 3 months training, 4 months training, where we are trying to eliminate some good practices or bad habits that they could be bringing from other operations of fleet transport or mass transport. Here we tell them that the perception of comfort and safety and security of the users is of the essence. That is why they have very good driving habits. The users in these buses perceive very good conditions because there's less noise and less pollution. But something mentioned by the users is the integration of the fares and the operations. Bus line, a line of buses that are electric, but that is disconnected, that has no possibility of integration of transfers, perhaps it will give you other type of results. So one of the main attributes of the user is the time and the cost of the trip. So something key in this implementation is that they are part of an integrated system with 11 lines of operation. It makes up a network that gives them very good coverage and very good possibilities to move around the Aburra Valley. In this implementation, the metro culture is of the essence, having implemented the system without barriers and ensuring that there's no evasion, because people do respect the system. People like the system and people value the system, and they know which are the rules of the game. That is key. We have several operators and drivers that can drive because they have received training on the use of these buses. But at first, the first group that began with this operation a year ago, they were quite proud. They felt that they were driving futuristic cars, quite new, striking cars, the future of transport. So they felt quite proud of driving these buses. Finally, let me share with you some of the highlights. I have already mentioned this before. The integration of the fares, the physical and operational integration. This is of the essence. We believe that the technology by itself is not sufficiently attractive for the users. There are some users who can have an environmental consciousness that might make them move towards environmentally friendly options, but there are other users that consider cost and time critical. So for them, it's important to have a physical operation and fair integration, which is something that this electric buses is providing to them. Also, it's important to do articulated and coordinated work between public, private entities and the academia. We are providing experience, know-how, and good practices to replicate this type of projects at the regional level, national level, or international level. Why not? Something very important that I consider relevant in the next steps towards mobility, electric mobility, is that we should work on asset management projects or processes where you can properly analyze the initial investment cost versus the operation cost. So you will not just stay with this idea that might scare a few, that the electric buses are 50% more costly than a diesel vehicle. So with that single idea, they do not make any decision, or they opt to continue using the diesel vehicles. Here we need to go through processes of analyzing the cost across the life cycle of the buses. And this is what asset management allows us to do. You can make very good decisions during the procurement or purchase, which will help you a lot during the operation and maintenance stage. That is clear for eliminating those barriers, hurdles, fears that exist vis-a-vis the acquisition of electric vehicles. We also consider positive and valid and even necessary to implement pilot tests. We shouldn't make decisions just like that. We need to refer to international literature. We need to see how other countries and regions are doing and what are the results they're obtaining. But it's important to have a clear definition of the specifications of the vehicle according to the city, according to the corridor, and according to the specific need of each region or country. And this can be done through pilot tests. So poor implementation might lead to a bad image or poor image. So we need to ensure closeness with the supplier or provider of the buses, so they provide support during maintenance, post-sale service. It is not just the supply of the units, but you need to feel that the supplier, the manufacturer, is there to timely take care of any problem and to ensure reliability to the fleet. Something very important is that we are very much used, this is what we usually see, we are very much used to maintaining, operating diesel vehicles or vehicles with a combustion engine. So our technical personnel, our workforce is not that skilled. They haven't gone through that experience or training for interventions, for getting to know more about the batteries and the engines. So it is important to have a good relationship with the academia, so we can generate technical processes to train technical experts that can help us in a couple of years. I don't know when in our timeline, but this shouldn't be in the long run. So we need to have this skilled labor. So once we end our relationship with a manufacturer, we can keep on using our local staff, so we do not have this dependency on the manufacturers. The same applies to the drivers. The drivers are key. They need to have very good habits, very good driving conditions, so we can have a proper implementation of the fleet, so we can obtain economies and so they can convey the users good conditions of safety and comfort. I have already mentioned this a couple of times, the importance of having an adequate definition of technical specifications, including the proper sizing of the batteries. We shouldn't just say that greater autonomy is the best because such a high autonomy might be unnecessary. This depends on the needs of a specific operation. So this is key because higher autonomy involves higher battery capacity, higher weight, higher cost. We shouldn't just generalize, but we need to understand what is needed. And according to that, we have to size and specify the clinical conditions of the fleet. It's also important to build procedures of charging and discharging. You need to know how to take care of the battery over time, how to go through those cycles of charging, discharging, when, at what time, under which conditions, to which percentage of charging and discharging should I take the buses, because we need to be very careful with the batteries and taking care of the batteries. So I believe that we do not have a close reference of a mature operation that has been running for 8 or 10 years that can tell us that the lifetime of batteries is this and that. And you have to replace them or not. So if we do not have that benchmark, if we do not have those lessons learned from other operations, so it's worth us making the effort to take care of the batteries. So in each of the companies and operations, you need to make that effort. Finally, the charging infrastructure. So the buses supplement the charging infrastructure. We need to properly size the charging infrastructure, and we need to go through the processes of installation, of civil and electric installation. So buses and chargers are both operational. Thank you very much, and this is the end of my presentation. Sorry, I cannot hear Paulina. I cannot hear Beatriz.
Disculpen
I
nuevamente,
am sorry about that. I was muted again. So let me repeat what I was saying. Thank you so much, Pedro Buitrago, for his presentation. And now we will have a brief pause, or we will break for 5 minutes, and then we will have a discussion panel.
Me dicen por aquí que no va el video, así que vamos en directo con el panel de discusión.
So we won't have a break. We will go directly to the discussion panel, which will be moderated by Paulina Rodriguez Ramirez del Barrio, and we will have some guests. Our guests are Pedro Buitrago from the Medellin Metro, and then we have also the ABB representative for Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and Asia Pacific. Since January 2017, WIN is responsible for project execution for the solutions of electric mobility of ABB for electric cars, buses, and trucks in our region. WIN is responsible for the technological association of ABB with the providers of services related to electromobility and OEM manufacturer for emerging markets. And now I'll give the floor to Paulina, who will moderate the discussion panel. Thank you so much, Beatrix. My microphone is unmuted. Very well. Can you hear me? Okay, I can hear some audio. Thank you so much, Diego and Pedro, for your presentations, and welcome, Wim. I would like to thank Christian, who presented before on behalf of ABB as well. I cannot hear Wim's microphone. Well, this Q&A session has general questions from the audience, and I will ask all of you to answer to these questions. We have divided this section in two main blocks, one related to efficiency and the other one to fleet management. There is a question regarding efficient driving, And this is for Diego and for Pedro. What other efficient practices in terms of driving should be strengthened in drivers in addition to regenerative braking, and what percentage of charging can be recovered with the regenerative braking system? Diego, can you go first, please? Okay, regarding the techniques, something that you have to be careful about when driving is when you get out, because the electric buses are very quick. So when they depart, they're very powerful. Therefore, you need to have precautions there, because it goes very fast and the consumption is also according to that. If you do it gradually, of course, the consumption will be a lot lower. Now, regarding regeneration, the data regarding the manufacturers, for example, what you can obtain in a specific trip, you could have 3 or 4% of this specific trip for regeneration of the battery. Okay, thank you very much, Diego and Pedro. In your experience of Medellin, what have you seen regarding regeneration? Paulina, hello, how are you? I think that a great deal was already mentioned in the presentation, and Diego has mentioned it as well. So we need to take into account acceleration and also braking. These are two very important practices that you need to really instruct in the drivers, and they have to do it the right way to prevent unnecessary consumption. And then the issue of regeneration, of course, depends on the slopes and the occupation of the buses. So that may vary. And I just mentioned our operation has slopes of 15% and 16%. Therefore, when we go up, of course, there is a higher consumption because of the effort of the engines. But when we go down, there is also a regeneration process. That would depend on the bus occupation, that is to say 50%, 60%, 80%. It will help to regenerate. We know that it is positive to achieve improvements in the autonomy of vehicles, and therefore it's also something that we promote in our operators, the right regenerative driving. Thank you so much, Pedro. Here we can see efficiency in terms of driving for vehicles, but when you at ABB, I want to know if it affects the charging efficiency to have a different type of charger, and what is the recommended type of charger for the type of operations that Diego has mentioned and Pedro has mentioned for our cases in Latin America.
Hello, can I first do an audio check? Can you hear me?
Sí, yo te puedo escuchar, Wim. Parece que estamos teniendo un problema con el audio.
Yes, I can hear you, Wim. It seems that, are we having a problem with Wim's audio?
No, it seems like it's working. I'm going to mute myself because there's an echo on my line. So hopefully you can hear me. With regards to the chargers to be installed in Latin America and for the applications in Chile and in Colombia, I think it's important for the type of chargers, first of all, to take into account the safety of the chargers, so that if chargers are going to be installed, that they are certified by third parties in relation to all standards that exist around the world for safe operation of DC fast chargers. So safety, that's the first point to take into account. Secondly, what's important is the interoperability for the chargers to be installed. So it is important that if you start with implementing...
Si ustedes empiezan a implementar las flotas de buses, los cargadores deben cumplir con los estándares internacionales para cargadores. Entonces, si ustedes tienen el estándar internacional para cargadores, deben evitar tener que haya solamente un proveedor y que solamente puedan utilizar un tipo de cargador. Eso es lo que se debe evitar. Lo que es extremadamente importante cuando se hace la inversión para la infraestructura de carga, tienen que asegurarse de que el cargador en el que están invirtiendo pueda cargarse con múltiples proveedores de todas las áreas alrededor del mundo, de tal manera que puedan crear un mercado abierto y de que estén preparados para el futuro. Y estos son los dos puntos principales que se deben considerar cuando se implementa ya sea cargadores AC o DC rápidos. Recomiendo que todos consideren estrechamente la seguridad y también la interoperabilidad de los cargadores. Gracias.
Aprovechando lo que dijiste al final respecto a lo que es AC y DC,
To add on to what you said at the end, AC and DC, which one of the two types of charges has a better behavior and price?
At a price.
Mejor comportamiento y mejor precio. Empecemos con el mejor comportamiento. No existe algo así como un mejor comportamiento, diría yo. Lo que sea apropiado para la operación debería ser la mejor operación, la mejor aplicación. Lo que quise decir es, si es que ustedes hacen solamente la carga en toda la noche y tienen tiempo significativo con las baterías relativamente pequeñas, entonces la carga AC podría ser una buena solución. Sin embargo, con los tamaños de baterías que están creciendo, están siendo más grandes y con el tiempo limitado que tienen para la carga en la noche en el depósito, sí vemos que los cargadores DC se están convirtiendo en la tecnología que es más aceptada a nivel internacional para la carga de los buses durante la noche. Sin embargo, no voy a decir si es que es AC o AC porque hay una inversión significativa que es distinta entre los cargadores AC y DC, pero tiene que ser apropiado para la operación. Con AC tienen una capacidad limitada de carga. Tienen que considerar si es que satisface las operaciones, si es que el caso comercial lo justifica, entonces escojan cargadores AC. Ahora, en el caso de cargadores DC, para satisfacer la operación, ahí yo diría que es extremadamente importante, si es que vemos los precios, que tomen el costo del ciclo de vida total de la operación, no solamente del cargador, sino también de la infraestructura completa alrededor de esto también, lo que significa que tiene que haber una conexión a la matriz eléctrica y otras tecnologías que también se necesitan para conectar a los cargadores. Entonces, para darles un resumen, AC y DC depende de la operación. Y también el precio, tienen que ver el costo total de la propiedad y el ciclo de vida total de la infraestructura.
muchas gracias, Win, por la respuesta. Esas las preguntas que teníamos en torno a lo que...
These are questions that we have regarding efficiency. Now, fleet management, a question that a lot of people are interested in because a lot of people have been writing about that in the chat box. What special considerations do you have in terms of the safety against fire of electric buses? Diego, could you please respond this question on behalf of FTP? Well, safety, the type of fire extinguisher is not the same as the type that you would use in a diesel-powered bus. In the case of Photon, I think it has 6 points in which it has fire extinguishers. For example, let's say a bus is burnt because of vandalism. These fire extinguishers will be activated. And another thing that we have generated are meetings with different firefighting units to have protocols. For example, in the case of vandalization of a bus, attacks of a bus, or if a bus burns down, so how do we achieve to put off that fire? So that's what we have done here at STP. Okay, perfect, Pedro. And what about in Medellin? Have you done something in addition to that, something that is different? No, we are aligned on the same terms. On the one hand, the manufacturer decides what protection systems will be implemented in the vehicle. So there are fire extinguishers that are installed in some of the compartments, whether in the batteries or electronic modules. And in addition to that, with the emergency organizations, we want them to be familiar with the buses as well. And we did that when we started to operate with the natural gas buses, and we're doing it as well with our operation of electric buses. with the emergency institutions, well, what we do is we show them the bus, we show them where certain components are located, and we want them to be aware and prepared so that they can really give a good service if something should happen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pedro. Here I have another question for Wim. Wim, the financing of electric buses is based on articulating the CAPEX through very low OPEX as operational costs. In the case of the fast charging systems or combined systems, can you keep that relationship to recover the CAPEX through the OPEX?
Ooh, yeah, let me tell you what the mix is of capex and opex of the charges. So the capex is for me the investment in the technology that needs to be done. So it's the initial investment that needs to be made, and then of course during the operation of the infrastructure, 10, 15 years, you have your maintenance, your expected maintenance, your unexpected maintenance. But what is also very important to take into account, especially with the growing energy demand, is with the grid connection that is required. So if you can manage your grid connection, which has a significant impact on the operational cost of the charging infrastructure, if you can manage the grid connection to be limited as much as possible, then that will have a significant impact. So the technology, for example, that we have is that we can, instead of connecting a fast charger to the grid, that we have one charging module that we can connect to 3 buses, so that 3 buses will be charged sequentially, instead of installing 3 of these power cabinets for all the 3 buses. So that means that you can reduce your grid connection by 2/3. Another, and I'll touch on that later on if questions arise, will be on the energy management that you can do on site, where you can limit your grid connection and still use the full capacity when it's possible, and to limit the capacity when all the buses are charging all at once. So there's always the mix between capex and opex. And it is important to make that balance when you decide to make the investment. What is very tempting, of course, is to reduce from a project perspective, to reduce the capex right at the beginning, and then you suffer during your opex because of high maintenance cost and excessive grid connections that are required.
Muchas gracias, Wim. Tomando lo que comentaba Wim respecto a los distintos.
Thank you very much, Wim. Taking what Wim was saying regarding different types of charge, I don't know, Diego, have you assessed on that regard a flat charging set with the buses that you have? And what differences in price percentually have you found? Look, no, we have not assessed fast charging buses so far. As I said in my presentation, we have an optimization model, and you have variables of the bus cost, the unit cost, the kilometer cost, and you can also input the charger's cost. And what you look for is to have a global solution that would reduce the total cost, both in terms of the number of buses and the chargers. So if you look at the Juanita terminal, we started with 25 buses and 13 chargers with 2 hoses only. That means that I had 1 hose per bus, which is not very efficient, but it was useful to test the technology, okay? So after that, at El Conquistador terminal with 215 buses, we only used 55 chargers, okay? And with 2 hoses, that means that there were only 110 posts to charge the 215 buses. So what I'm saying here is that you need to have modeling. That's why I talked about the basis of the size of the buses, because it's very important to have a model that would allow you to find what is the best solution. Basically, what I'm saying is that you could have different prices, you could have different buses, different chargers, and you have to assess all of this range of products in a model that would deliver you what is the best solution and what is the best price or the best combination, so to say, for the problem at hand. right? So I wouldn't be able to say if one type of a specific charger is better than the other one, because you need to have a global assumption that would include fixed and variable costs. Perfect. Thank you so much, Diego. And I have a question for Pedro as well. The electric buses or coaches for 40 passengers, the feeders, were they especially defined for Medellin, or is that a market configuration? So what's the slope that they can go up to, and what's the brand that they are? Okay, the brand is Shangtong. It's a Chinese manufacturer. So this private operator made a process to build bus specifications with a local company. The local company developed, depending on the topographic conditions, the roads, the slopes, the length, and the functioning of each one of the routes. And according to all of that, they did a sizing, or they did the characterization of the buses. So after that characterization, the operator went to visit different manufacturers, Chinese manufacturers, looking for which one would be adapted in a better way to comply with the characteristics or technical specifications. So this is how they achieved to get this vehicle of 8 meters, 8.5 meters. So I think that it has a capacity for 40 passengers and capacity to perform in slopes of up to 24% approximately. So it has been approved in some routes and in areas that are somewhat flat without a lot of slope, and they were looking to guarantee the commissioning and stability in the fleet. That's how they started. But then they started to move it in other routes where the slope is higher and the demands are higher in order to have results about its behavior. Thank you so much, Pedro. Well, STP and Exponenta here in Santiago, and Pedro, you in Medellin, Colombia, you have both considered the design before implementing. So that's the case of the first 25 buses, right? Because it was kind of an experiment for you. And maybe there is a pilot that you did to also have these experiments in Medellin as well. So Win, as ABB, you have also participated, well, besides of the projects that Christian showed in his presentation in Europe, you have also participated in projects in Latin America, also supporting in the characterization and design of the charging infrastructure. Can you tell us about some examples or lessons learned or best practices that you would recommend for other countries in Latin America?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. Let me start with some trends that we recognize, and then I will end up with an example of a depot that we are where we are charging the buses in Santiago. So the global trend that we see, and I hear the same thing here in this meeting today, is that all projects start as pilot projects. Start with a few buses, with small buses, not the small buses, but with a limited number of buses. But now it gets serious. Now whole fleets are being electrified. If we look at the Santiago project, if we look at the Transmilenio project, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of buses. So what we also will see is that the energy demand that we will see on the depots, that will go absolutely sky high. And that is what we see as the biggest challenge at the moment for fleet management. So what is key, and that is now the evolution that we are seeing in the European fleets and depots, is that first of all, we see energy management being applied to really make sure that you don't blow the fuse, as Christian presented earlier today, or where battery energy storage is being introduced for peak shaving. So that is one thing that we see. And where we're heading for is that we are going to integrate that with more intelligent systems, with the fleet management systems, with weather predictions. Vehicle to grid will start to play a role as well. So it is really the cost of energy will start to play a role in this. So it is energy management and linking that to artificial intelligence, or at least to intelligent systems. That's a trend that we absolutely see happening at the moment. We are doing that now in Europe. I think that Christian just showed the example of a few projects. One of the key projects is with Hamburger Hochbahn, where we are doing that. Today, actually, or yesterday, we commissioned a new depot in Milan, in Italy, where we are combining energy management with battery energy storage. So that it's really happening. It's not something that is far away. It's happening today. And in fact, today I had a meeting with a customer in Santiago who is operating a number of electric buses and who's using our infrastructure to charge the buses. Well, the first thing that they've done to manage the energy is to make use of sequential charging, so that you can hook up 3 buses to one power cabinet, and that the charging cabinet will charge one bus after the other bus. So you need 2 hours plus 2 hours plus 2 hours to charge the bus. So that's the first thing that they've done to manage the energy. But now the question comes already, like, I'm operating a limited number of buses at this depot, but I see it growing in the near future. And when I see it growing in the near future, I need to manage my energy. So that is what we do see starting to happen in Latin America now as well. And in fact, we see it happening in Santiago de Chile, where we do see customers now starting to look at energy management on the depots. Extremely important. Next step will be linking it to the intelligent systems around fleet management, around weather forecast, around energy trading.
Muchas gracias, Win. Aprovechando lo que comentaba.
Win, thank you so much. Taking advantage of what Win said regarding intelligent management systems and what you said, Diego, that you have an online monitoring system and you have applications to do monitoring of the buses and to control the charging systems that you showed, this second story, this second floor, because that's different to what he showed, because it's that your charging system is at the roof. So how have you thought of integrating other elements or business models? For example, what Win was saying in terms of doing the control, delivery of complementary services with the buses, or connecting the vehicle to the grid using your buses. I don't know, have you assessed that? Or maybe autonomous buses, since we're looking at smart cities, right? If we put this in an industrial context, and that's precisely where electromobility fits in. Well, I think that in that regard, I think that we're lagging behind. We have not seen, or we have not been able to integrate the buses to the grid, as you mentioned. We haven't studied that type of application currently in Santiago, or at least STP hasn't done it. Okay, perfect. And Pedro, have you been looking at it, maybe to assess it in the future? Well, within the fleet control system, we have integrated the measurement and follow-up to technical variables and operational variables of vehicles. And with that, we hope that at some point, when we have enough information, we will be able to make decisions to improve the technical parameters of behavior and performance of the buses, and also the parameters related to driving habits. We have also considered important to have a control system on the chargers. Nonetheless, we haven't done it yet. We consider that it's important for the future. It will be interesting for the future to have some sort of record, control, and management regarding the charging process. Thank you so much, Pedro. I have one question for all of you in general. Do you have, or could you have, a division or a department of consultancy work to help planning and design the fleet management for the Latin American region? And if you have a department or a division in charge of that, or you're thinking of having it, how is it that our audience can contact you? I don't know, maybe Diego, you can go first? Well, regarding that point, we have been studying models for a long time to be able to size an electric terminal, and that's why we have this terminal of almost 9 megawatts of power, which is the largest one in the world. So we have a lot of experience in terms of how to have the right size of the fleet, the chargers, etc. So even if we do not have internally a consultant firm, we do not give consultancy services, that's because we haven't had the opportunity. But I think that we could be open to generating spaces of that kind. Thank you so much, Diego. And how can they contact you? Well, by email. That would be simple. Email. Can you share it? Maybe you can share it in the social media. I don't know. Okay, what we're going to do is that the presentation will be available, but I don't remember if your presentation had your contact information in the end. And if not, then we can tell our audience to contact Calac Plus, because we can contact you, and we can be the link so that you can give them support. Now, in the case of Pedro, the Medellin Metro, do you have a consultancy department? Yes, we do. At the Medellin Metro, we have a management, and within that management, there is an area that is in charge of the knowledge business. So we develop advising or consultancy to convey our knowledge and experience. The knowledge that we have regarding rail systems or air cable systems or tramways, bus operations, at the operational level, we have a lot of experience. And in addition to that, at the social management level, the metro culture and citizen culture, and how that connection with the citizens can help us in facilitating the implementation of transportation systems that would transform cities in a positive way. So we have an area that is devoted to those type of consultancies and conveying good practices and good experience and knowledge. So if you want, right now, I can give you an email so that you can contact me. It's consultoriasmetro@metrodemedellin.gov.co. Or you can also contact me, and I can give you more detail, and I can contact you with the people who are in that department. Thank you so much, Pedro. And Win, you have also mentioned before that you gave advice to different companies, even here in Santiago. I don't know, maybe you want to add something else regarding that department that you have to give support, thinking of our audience of Latin America, because they might be interested.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I must say, I must give a compliment to Diego and to Pedro, because every time when I meet with operators, sometimes I want to go in and I want to discuss the solution that we have straight away. And always I found out that there is so much knowledge into the details with the operators. And it is with all the operators, whether you talk to operators in Asia, in Europe, or in Latin America, there's so much knowledge there. So I do understand that Pedro's company has made a business out of this and now has a consultancy firm. I fully understand. We as ABB, we supply technology, which we have the ingredients to optimize fleets. But what we need to do is we need to consult the customers to absolutely make best use of the ingredients that we have. So that is what we do when I talked about the Santiago de Chile depot, is we really reach out to the customer and we listen to the customer what is exactly needed, and then we see what the best ingredients we can deliver to this customer. So yeah, we can do so. We can do that on the technology side to fit that into fleets. Another type of, and that is truly consultancy that we have, is what we call interoperability consultancy. And that is where we can have a look at buses that are new to the operator, how they can be fit into a network of chargers, so that you have a truly interoperability between the buses being used and the chargers being used. So those that's a true consultancy that we have. And the rest what we do is more in partnership consultancy with the customers to see what ingredients that ABB has and that we can supply to the operators. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Wim. Muchas
Thank you
gracias.
so much, Win. Thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you so much, Diego. So we will finish this Q&A session now so that we can finish this seminar. So once again, for your presentations. And thank you so much because of answering to all of these questions that speak about your business specifically. And you have been so helpful for all of the people who are watching this seminar and they want to implement their own electromobility fleets in their own countries. Thank you so much. You have the floor, Beatriz. Thank you so much, Paulina. We look like the central news channel with the coordination that we have with Paulina Ramirez.
Queremos agradecer
Well,
enormemente
we would like to thank Wayne, Diego Muñoz, Pedro Buitriago for this discussion panel. And now we are going to close this event. For this, we'll have the closing words of Rafael Millán. He's the National Program Officer of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC. We would like to welcome Rafael. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Can you hear me okay? Well, I just want to express my gratitude to all the participants. They have been told that we have had over 250 participants during these last 3 days of the seminars, not only the 3 countries of the Calac Plus project, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Mexico, but also Ecuador, Libya, people from the United States, Switzerland, several European countries. So we feel very happy at SDC for such a good turnout around this topic, which is quite trendy. It does not only have an environmental component in terms of generating less greenhouse gas emissions because of climate change, but also from the side of having a lower impact, noise pollution, and less impact on air pollutants. So it has been quite fruitful for the participants to hear the different presentations during these 3 days. They have touched on a number of topics that we as Calac project identify as quite interesting in terms of energy efficiency of electric bus fleets, also the financing schemes, and today's topic, the management of electric fleet. So at SDC, we are very happy for the support received by the participants, the authorities involved, and the different countries. And once again, thank you very much. This is what we wanted to say on behalf of SDC. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rafael Millán. We want to thank the National Program Officer of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC. And to conclude, we will have the closing remarks of the Deputy Executive Director of the Agency for International Development Cooperation, AGCID. Oh, actually, they are just going to show a closing video, I have just been told. But first, we will have a video to share with you.
Bueno, a todas las personas que quieren acceder a las presentaciones.
All those people who wish to have access to the speakers' presentations, it will be made available in Calac's website, http://programas.calac.cr/. You can download all the presentations that you have seen in this 3 days of the International Seminar on Electromobility for Latin America. We are having some trouble with the video, so please bear with us, but we will show you the video shortly. 1, 2, 3, there comes the video again. Sorry, the video has no audio.
Transporte urbano bajo en emisiones de carbono.
Low in carbon emissions, so the cities can provide better conditions to their population. Calac Plus has provided technical assistance and support to improve legal frameworks, environmental and transport regulations, planning of investment and development of capacities by creating suitable conditions for establishing soot-free conditions and low carbon emissions in urban public transport systems. The cities have guided their efforts towards reducing ultrafine particulates in 2 main axes: quality of fuels and introduction of ultrafine emission particulate standards. The first Latin American seminars on nanoparticles shared specifics of nanoparticles and their harmful effects on the population. To learn more about the technological development and the nanoparticle control systems from the European and US standard. As a result of the interest of this seminar, we promoted the creation of the working group on nanoparticle emission standards in Latin America. This space seeks to strengthen decision makers in the elaboration of the technical support and management to generate regulations for implementing standard procedures for the control and monitoring of nanoparticles and the technical specifications that ensure the introduction of less carbon intensive units. They have developed a tool by using the same methodologies than the Plus of WHO for evaluating the economic and environmental impact associated to different regulatory scenarios of the transport sector, associated to migration towards Euro 6 emission standards, electric vehicles, and vehicle labeling. The program supports clean transport in the country, a number of measures in coordination with state actors. These activities are focused on migration of Euro 4 technology to Euro 6 technology, guidelines for vehicle restriction by using environmental labeling, introduction of electric vehicle fleet in urban transport, electromobility studies in buses, general analysis of economic and social impacts for the elaboration of the nanoparticle measurement standard in public transport buses with diesel particulate filter. Additionally, and considering the needs of each partner of the program, we have developed a number of webinars to encourage transfer of knowledge, in addition to Calac Plus participation in different events, including the COP25. Finally, we have a virtual platform that makes available studies and guidelines for the implementation of measures that will reduce soot emissions and other pollutant emissions in non-road mobile machinery and buses.
Bueno, acabamos de ver el video de cierre.
So now we have just seen the closing video. Remember, the website, it is on the screen, the Calac Plus website. To conclude this event, we would like to invite Valeria Matus. She's coordinator of the program of the Department of Multilateral Cooperation, AGCID. Valeria has also been working in public transport, electromobility, and in studies about charging capacity. She will close this event.
Calac Plus se puede acceder en www.programacalac.com. Vamos a ver si ya estamos con Valeria. Estaremos con Valeria en los próximos segundos. Valeria, ¿estás por ahí? Me dicen que todavía no llega Valeria. Por el momento la vamos a esperar. Lo siento, me cuentan aquí por interno que Valeria no se podrá presentar para dar las palabras de cierre, así que dan por cerrado este seminario de electromovilidad para Latinoamérica. Queremos agradecer a todas las personas que estuvieron días del seminario atentas a todas las presentaciones. Agradecemos enormemente su asistencia, su participación. Todas las presentaciones, como lo he dicho una y otra vez, estarán en la página web del programa Calac Plus en https://programacalac.com. Les agradezco muchísimo, muy buenas tardes y que tengan un feliz día y por supuesto también un feliz fin de año.